Don't you just love football? Don't you? Normally, I would tell you, don't watch me. Watch TV. But guess what? I'm on TV. So watch me. That's right. I'm your man, Louie Tee, for those of you who don't know. And this is the inaugural episode of Pro Football Central Weekly, a show that I will be doing twice a week for the website profootballcentral.com. This is a site that features podcasts, print articles, so check it out. Over 20 podcasts for your liking, a lot of different teams. So most likely, if you are a fan of a specific team in the National Football League, this site, profootballcentral.com, will have a podcast to your liking covering your team and your team only. So check it out. Also have a lot of different stories covering the National Football League. So there's something for everyone on the site, profootballcentral.com. Now, I'll be doing this show twice a week from now until probably the end of the season. And I'll have a schedule set for you as to when this show will be on each and every week, so you know when to find it. But trust and believe, I will have this show up and running, and you will enjoy yourself while you're here. So I'll just be talking about a multitude of football topics here on this program. And anything happening in the National Football League is fair game. And something that I haven't addressed yet, and I really haven't had a chance to, had a lot of different things going on, but rest assured, I said I would get around to it, and here's the platform for me to do it. I want to start off by talking about the Riley Cooper situation in Philadelphia. Now, for those of you who don't know what occurred, this is essentially what happened. Now, look, Riley Cooper got drunk, made a monumental mistake. It happens. People make mistakes. I don't know Riley Cooper personally. And so while everyone wanted to talk about it right as it happened, they wanted to get people's first reaction, their initial reaction to the situation, I said, you know what? I'm going to allow this situation to breathe, take a step back, and then I'll come out and talk about how I feel about this situation. If I feel the same way I do when it first occurred, then that's probably the right reaction toward the situation. So I allowed that situation to air out, and I'm here to tell you that I really don't feel any more differently than I did when it first happened. Now, what I will say is this: alcohol doesn't make you a different person. I feel like alcohol and money are much of the same. They're one and the same. They don't make you a different person. They just make you more of what you already are. If you're a jerk and you get drunk, guess what? That alcohol will probably make you more of a jerk. I'll give you an example. I'm a very talkative person. As you could imagine, I'm not bashful. I love to talk. If you didn't know that, now you do. And guess what happens when I have a couple of cold ones? That's right. I don't know how to shut up. I keep talking, and at times, I can't stop. Almost like the Energizer Bunny. That's what I think happened to Riley Cooper. Now, I'm not saying that he's a racist or he's a closet racist, but I'm just saying that somewhere ingrained in his memory bank, is that word, the N word I'm talking about, and he's probably used it on numerous occasions, and it came out. Now, the reason I want to talk about this is not to attack Riley Cooper, the person, because I'm pretty sure people have done that on other platforms. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to talk about the impact that this can have on this Philadelphia Eagles team. Now, he's already back in Philadelphia. He's already went to sensitivity counseling, and he's come back to the football team. He's even played in a preseason game. So right now, all is well in Philadelphia, at least on the surface. But there are about three things that I think can really tear apart a locker room at the seams with players inside of that very locker room. Now, one of them, I won't really discuss it. So you could really say four, because I feel like one thing that could tear a locker room apart at the seams. It could or it couldn't. It's hard to say. It's a very touchy subject, but an openly gay player in a locker room might be something that puts a divide right in the middle of a locker room. Who knows? But three other things that I think are definitely lightning rods in a locker room that can cause some serious turmoil and trouble in a locker room is one, something like what Riley Cooper has done, calling people a race of people, especially when probably 70 to 80% of that locker room is African American. Hey, the majority of players in the National Football League are black. Let's face it. So, the majority of that locker room is black. You're going to have some players that feel like, hey, he made a mistake. This isn't who he is, and we need to forgive him. People make mistakes. And then you're going to have others who can't get past the fact, like a LaShawn McCoy. He's already come out and said, hey, I can't really respect this guy after what he said and his actions at that Kenny Chesney concert. I can't respect him as a man, as a player, as a teammate. You've got other players on the other side of the fence, like a Jason Avant, who feels the direct opposite. Hey, this guy made a mistake. We all deserve second chances. Let's give Riley Cooper a chance to redeem himself. And so that's the kind of dynamic you have going on in the locker room. And that's one of those things that can be really touchy. I think that's definitely one situation that can rip apart a locker room. Two would be sleeping with a teammate's wife or girlfriend. Can't cross that line. You can't cross those boundaries. Can't happen. And three would be stealing from another teammate. We've seen that happen. I remember it clear as day. Albert Connell stealing from teammates in his locker room when he was in New Orleans. He was already on the outskirts of being pushed out of the league anyway, and that was the final straw that broke the camel's back. They had to get rid of him in New Orleans after he stole from a teammate. And so those are things that can really pull apart a locker room at the seams. So Riley Cooper committed one of those cardinal sins, and right now everything is fine. They're really trying to get past this bump in the road. But I tell you what, winning is the best deodorant there is. You win, people tend to forget very easily. This is a saying that I think is so true in sports. We will forgive a winner. We will tolerate a loser. And if the Eagles win, this thing may not come up again. We might not hear about Riley Cooper's gaffe that happened at the beginning of training camp that really served as a distraction to this Philadelphia Eagles team. But if they start losing, the top is going to come off of this whole situation. Guys are going to start speaking out about it. And you've already got different players. This isn't a locker room that is full of veteran leaders that have been in Philadelphia for a number of years that will calm down any kind of external forces that might cause problems in the locker room. This is a new regime, a lot of new players, a lot of new faces in this locker room. And so there's no pecking order right now. You got guys like Kerry Williams, who just came on board from the Super Bowl winning Baltimore Ravens football team onto this Eagles roster in the offseason, him being a free agent acquisition. He's already come over and said, hey, this defense is soft. We allowed the Patriots to come and push us around in practice. We scrimmaged them, and they pushed us around in the scrimmage. We're a soft team. If I was still a Raven and they did that to us, it wouldn't have went down the way it went down. And so essentially he's challenging this Eagles defense. Hey, we're soft. We need to step it up. He later backtracked on those comments, but that's just to give you an idea, a sense of how, hey, look, if this thing goes in the wrong direction, guys are going to be speaking out, like a Kerry Williams. And you can't tell me that there aren't other players in this locker room that feel just like LaShawn McCoy feels, except they just haven't said anything publicly. LaShawn McCoy isn't one to hold his tongue. If he has a thought or he has an opinion on something, he's going to let it be known. He's going to voice it. And there may be others in the locker room just like him, except they don't want to let their opinions be known out in the public, but they feel the same way. And if they start to lose, you could see some of that dissension creep and seep into that locker room. I tell you what, this situation is one that you got to be careful with. And I tell you right now, Riley Cooper is so lucky that the injury bug has hit the Philadelphia Eagles the way it has. You look at that Jeremy Maclin injury, and that one right there is the one that saved his job in Philadelphia. If Jeremy Maclin is still healthy and running around and playing at the wide receiver position for the Philadelphia Eagles in 2013, Riley Cooper isn't on this football team. It's really simple. Him being injured made Riley Cooper's presence on this team a necessity. He had to be around because they don't have any other receivers that they feel comfortable starting across from Deshaun Jackson. And so that saved him, that injury to Jeremy Maclin. You also couple that with the injury of Aurelius Bannon, and they're in some serious trouble in Philadelphia at the receiver position. And so a guy like Riley Cooper becomes that much more important, and that's why he's still around. Trust me, had the Eagles had a full complement of receivers, Riley Cooper is not on this roster. And the bad part about this, and I would not have wanted to have seen Riley Cooper dismissed from this Eagles football team, and this is why. Because he made a mistake. He said something that he should not have said, but it would have cost him his career had he not been a Philadelphia Eagle. And this is why. If he can't be accepted after this mistake in the Philadelphia Eagles locker room, name me one team that's going to bring him into their locker room when the Eagles, who have been with Riley Cooper, and a lot of these players have been with Riley Cooper and been teammates of his for the last 3 or 4 seasons. If these guys reject him and shun him and push him away and he's gone out of Philadelphia, what locker room full of strangers who don't know this guy, who only know him as the guy who used the N-word, what locker room is going to embrace this guy? Not one single team around the National Football League would welcome Riley Cooper into their locker room. Not a one. And so he had to be an Eagle. If he wasn't an Eagle, he wasn't going to play anywhere else. And I would have hated to have seen his career be ended because of one mistake, one word. It's not like he went out and assaulted someone. He said something that is very sensitive that he should not have said. He made a huge mistake. And it's going to take a lot of time for him to really get back into the good graces of a lot of people. But at the end of the day, I don't think it was worth him losing not just his job in Philadelphia, because maybe you could argue that it warranted him losing his job in Philadelphia. But we're talking about losing his career. I'm not sure if that extreme measure needed to be taken, but it would have been had he been released off of this Eagles football team. So glad to see him still in Philadelphia, and we'll see how this whole situation plays out. But I tell you what, if they start losing in Philadelphia, you heard it here first, this thing is going to get really, really ugly. Now, the next thing I want to cover is what's going on out in the nation's capital, or currently in Richmond, with Robert Griffin III. Now, I'm not bashful. I'm a Redskins fan, and so there is a little bit of a vested interest here. But I'm unbiased. Anyone who's watched my channel for any period of time can tell you that I'm not a biased guy. Whether I'm talking about my boys or not, doesn't matter. Could be talking about the Cowboys, the Giants, the Eagles. Doesn't matter. I'm not a biased guy. I tell it like it is. My opinion isn't skewed one way or the other. I simply just love football. And so I love talking it. I love watching it. And I'm not a biased guy. So when I look at Robert Griffin III, and look, he's my guy. You know, as T.O. put it, he's my quarterback. That's my quarterback. That's my guy. I love Robert Griffin III. But something that irks me with him slightly is that he's talking too much. Stop talking, Robert. And the reason I say that is because these guys are sitting on every single word you say. Anything that this guy does, it's a story. He changed his hair. A couple of days ago, he comes out to the podium to practice, and he's got cornrows now. It's a story. I saw an article about this. I'm like, really? But that's Robert Griffin III, and that's the huge spectacle that this guy has become. And okay, I'm fine with that. But anything this guy says is going to stir up controversy. And I thought that Jason Whitlock wrote an article. And look, I don't usually agree with Jason Whitlock. He's a guy that a lot of times says things for effect. Sometimes he has some really good opinions. Other times he's just blowing out hot air. But in this particular article, he talks about Robert Griffin III needing to shut up and how his ego is the reason why he wants to come back so quickly. And while there is some truth to that, I also believe that it's his competitive nature and spirit that wants to get him back on the field. Now, look, make no mistake about it. I don't think for 1 second that Robert Griffin III wants to share the spotlight with anyone. I do not think he wants to share this spotlight with Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins has been playing some really good football in Washington. Had a really good showing in the preseason. And I want to take you back in the Robert Griffin III timeline for a second. We start with draft day. And the Redskins draft him. And everything's honky-dory in Washington. And then guess what happens? The very next day, the Redskins draft quarterback Kirk Cousins. And people ask Robert, well, how do you feel about this? And he probably gave them some kind of politically correct answer. Something to the effect of, hey, if they want to draft him, they called me, they asked me. I was okay with it. You know, not like they were going to not pick him if Robert said, no, don't draft him. But they just wanted to warn him, hey, we're going to take a quarterback. Doesn't mean anything. You're still our guy, but we just need insurance. So Robert probably gave a politically correct answer. Hey, they took another quarterback. I'm fine with it. We're going to learn together, grow together. But, you know, at the end of the day, this is my team, and I'm going to lead the Washington Redskins. Something to that effect. And in the back of his mind, he was probably saying, why did they draft another quarterback? They don't need another quarterback. They got me. And he goes down with an injury. We all know about the gruesome hit he took from Haloti Ngata versus the Baltimore Ravens and the fallout from that. He gets injured. He can't play in the next week versus the Cleveland Browns. So who shows up? None other than Kirk Cousins. And what does Kirk Cousins do? Goes and has one whale of a ball game. And so what does Robert Griffin III do? After that game is over, immediately after the game is over at the press conference, he goes to the podium and he starts talking about how he should have played in this game, how he is irate that he didn't play, and how he wants to play the very next week against the Philadelphia Eagles. Mind you, that this man's leg was almost ripped off of his body. His kneecap was almost placed at the back of his knee, not the front of it where it belongs, yet he wants to get back on the field the very next week. Conventional wisdom says that's not a very smart idea to put this guy back on the field, but he was so irate and he had built up so many points with the media that he had put the pressure square on Mike Shanahan by running his mouth, saying that I could have played against Cleveland, I should have played, and now I want to play against Philadelphia. If the player says, hey, I feel good, if the doctor clears him, of course, the coach, I won't say has no choice, but in the situation that Robert Griffin III put him in, it's hard to say, hey, you can't play even though you've been medically cleared and you feel good. Hard to explain to the team, especially if you lose that football game, hey, I didn't want to put him in and jeopardize him. If the guy says he can go and the doctors say he can go, then he goes. Now, Robert made a huge stink at the end of that Cleveland game. Not because, and I take this back. I don't want to say not because he didn't want to just go out and play for his team, because he wanted to go out and play for his teammates. He wanted to go out and help his team win. But not so much because he felt like I should have been out there because he wanted to help the team win. but more so because Kirk Cousins looked really good. And he didn't want people to start clamoring for Kirk Cousins. And I know, as silly as that sounds, because Robert Griffin III is a different breed of quarterback. They don't make quarterbacks like him every day. And so for him to be thinking that, my job could be at stake, or, I might have to share the spotlight with this guy, you're thinking that's asinine. Why would he feel that way? But players have huge egos, and you can never tell what a player is thinking. And I'm thinking that Robert Griffin III didn't want to share that spotlight with Kirk Cousins. And so he gets up to the mic and he tells him, hey, I should have played, and I can play, and I will play next week. He plays the next week, and he plays well against Philadelphia. We win the game. He plays well against the Cowboys. They win the game. They get in the playoffs. He gets injured. He should have came out of the game. What does he do? He says, hey, I'm good. I can go back in, coach. They put him back in. He tears his ACL, LCL, and whatever else CL you can think of. MCL, throw them all in there. Why not? PCL, pretty sure he didn't tell the PCL, but he tore a lot of ligaments. ACL, MCL, LCL, he tore some ligaments and did some serious damage to that knee. And it was all because of him wanting to stay in the game. Why did he want to stay in the game? Yeah, he wanted to help his team. But I don't know if he wanted the narrative of the story for the Washington Redskins in the season to change from Robert Griffin III, the savior, to Kirk Cousins, the savior. If he comes out of this ball game, Redskins up, let's call it 14-3, and he comes out of this ball game, and Kirk Cousins leads the Redskins to a 28-17 victory, what's the headlines on Monday morning? If he comes out of the game and the Redskins are trailing 17-14, and Kirk Cousins leads this team to a victory, a come-from-behind victory at that, what's the storyline? Remember, keep in mind, Robert Griffin III had to come out against the Ravens, and they literally had to drag him off the field in that game. He went back in after the injury from Haloti Ngata, and guess who saved the day? You guessed it, Kirk Cousins. And so there was a repeating theme here. Kirk Cousins coming in relief of Robert Griffin III and showing well. People giving Kirk Cousins praises. Robert Griffin III being not necessarily pushed aside, but put on the back burners. And I don't think he liked it that much. And here we go again, preseason now. We fast forward to 2013 now. Robert Griffin III, not ready to go yet. He feels as if he's ready to go, but he's not ready to go. Medically, doesn't make sense to put him in the game if it doesn't count. And so he wants to play. Competitive juices are flowing, but doesn't make any sense for him to play right now. But Kirk Cousins shows up, has a magnificent showing against the Tennessee Titans in 2 possessions of work, 6 of 7, 52 yards, touchdown, looks really, really fluid in the offense, looks to have a great command and grasp of the offense and what is expected of him. Is throwing the football extremely well. Everyone's talking about how good Kirk Cousins looked. All of a sudden, Robert Griffin III steps up to the mic, and now he doesn't understand why he's not playing. He doesn't understand the process at which the Redskins are deciding to bring him back into this football team. The reintegration of Robert Griffin III, as he coined it. He wasn't understanding how they could predetermine how this thing was going to play out. It's really simple. You told Mike Shanahan you were healthy last year, and you weren't. He put you back in the game, trusting your judgment. It was wrong, and guess who had to take the brunt of that? He did. And so he's not going down that route again. If anything happens to Robert Griffin III this time around, it will be because it was some freak accident. It happened by chance. Not because Mike Shanahan rushed him back and put him in prematurely because Robert Griffin III said he was ready to go, but more so because, hey, his ACL just didn't hold up. But make no mistake about it, this won't occur in the preseason. Now, Robert is lobbying to play in the preseason. For what? No reason to. However, he wants to go. And the sense of urgency that you saw from him at the podium on Monday, his first time to really address the media since that Tennessee Titans preseason opener, that sense of urgency to want to play, definitely some of that comes from and stems from the fact that Kirk Cousins went out and performed so well. And he wants to make sure that he still has a firm grasp of this team. But I'm here to tell Robert, there's no need for you to feel threatened or challenged as the starting QB in Washington. That is your throne, my friend. You are the king of the throne. There's no one even close. You are on the pedestal, my man. And that job, quarterback of the Washington Redskins, starting quarterback of the Washington Redskins, is yours and yours alone. And so, no need to rush back. We want you in this thing for the long haul. We want you to have a 15-year career, not a 5. And so if Mike Shanahan needs to sit this guy down for the entire preseason, which he has already said he is going to do, and he is sticking steadfast to that notion that, hey, this guy does not need to play. And so if that's the case, everyone, including Robert Griffin III, should be on board with that decision. And so hopefully Robert will stop talking so much. He comes out and he makes a big fuss about not being back and not doing 11-on-11 drills and not being able to play in the preseason. And he can't understand this and he doesn't know why this is happening. Stop talking. You're saying too much. You're giving the media too much fodder. Then it gets out of control. He pulls the I'm being misunderstood, misconstrued card. Of course you are. You said too much. So he has to come back to the podium the next day after taking to Twitter the day before to try to clear up any kind of notion that there's a rift between him and Mike Shanahan. He has to come back to the podium when he's not even scheduled to talk, just to tell everyone, hey, there's nothing going on between me and Coach. We're on the same page. When he gives me the green light, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to play football. And I trust in everything that he's doing. I know why he's doing it. And we're on the same page. None of this would have had to been said had he not said what he said in the first place, which goes back to my original point of him needing to scale it back in terms of talking so much. Now he's commenting on gay players. And look, when there's a player that is as polarizing as Robert Griffin III is, you can comment on whatever you like because your statements, they weigh a lot heavily, more so than most players in the league. And so he had an article in GQ magazine. He was on the cover talking about, gay players and this is their window of opportunity to come out. He didn't really have a stance one way or the other, but he was just saying, hey, if you're going to come out, be who you are. And he's just commenting on everything. And I'm just like, hey, Robert, scale it back a little bit, buddy. Dial it down. Focus on football. Don't give the media so much to talk about. You're already a guy that attracts attention even when you're not looking to do so. No need to bring even more attention to yourself when it's not necessary. And so now I want to get into the final segment of the show. And I could call it food for thought, but with all of the talking that I've already done, your mind might be already full. Maybe I've already gave it enough food to fill it up. Maybe I've already given it enough thought. So you don't need a huge helping at the end of the show. I've already given you that. So I'm going to give you something a little bit lighter, something I like to call a mental snack. And my mental snack for today is simply the NFL. And what does NFL stand for? You could argue it stands for not for long, as the average career in the National Football League is slightly under 4 seasons. You could say, hey, state the obvious, National Football League. Many of you, including myself, like to think of it as the no fun league. And here's another example of the league taking away another piece of fun. they've cracked down on celebrations again. And this story came out a week ago. They've cracked down on sack dances. They've cracked down on spinning the football. They've cracked down on salutes. They've cracked down on hitting home runs. Of course, Alfred Morris made that a popular touchdown celebration a season ago. They've cracked down on the Incredible Hulk, ripping off your shirt and screaming. Why is this necessary? Why? If I score a touchdown, which to me is one of the biggest single accomplishments in the course of a game, why wouldn't you want them celebrating that? That's a part of the game. And it's sheer jubilation when you score. And you deserve to be able to celebrate in just about any manner you like, with the exception of taunting another player. I don't understand why the league feels the need to not allow players to express themselves. It just doesn't make sense to me. If I get a sack, you know how hard it is to get a sack in the National Football League? It's not an easy thing. You've got 5 guys, 6 if they put a tight end on the line, 7 if they put 2 tight ends into block, 8 if they want to put in a back for maximum protection, blocking for one man to stop you from getting to the quarterback. And after you accomplish the feat of getting to the quarterback, it is just a rush of adrenaline that you can't describe. And you want to celebrate. I just got to the quarterback. I just helped my team. I just made it harder on the opposing team to pick up a first down, to score points. I just did something big. Why can't I get up and celebrate? As long as I'm not doing it in close proximity to another player, as long as I'm not taunting another player, why can't I get up and celebrate? What's wrong with that? Players have done it for years. It hasn't been a problem. Why is it all of a sudden a problem now? I don't understand. This is the same league that fines players for not wearing their socks at a specific height, for not wearing the right color socks, for having a towel on their belt. This is the same league that fines people for small infractions of the uniform. Brian Orakpo recently had his face mask, they call it the Bane face mask, banned by the league. Darnell Dockett had his face mask banned by the league. Robert Mathis had his face mask banned by the league. They're just banning face masks. And I kind of understand where they're going with this, because if you allow one guy to have his way with a face mask and it's not a medical condition and they're not medically cleared to have that face mask, then everyone will want to customize their face mask, and some guys will take it further than others and it'll get out of control. And so in order to keep that under control and rein that in, you just don't allow anyone to do it. I understand that. But with celebrations, I don't get it. I don't get why you can't spin the football. People have been doing it for years. Why can't you get up and celebrate a sack? People have been doing it for years. What's wrong with a salute? I don't understand. I just don't get it. But nothing surprises me anymore with the National Football League, because as we've already said, they are the no fun league for a reason. And so, with that being said, for all of us at ProFootballCentral.com, I'm Louie Tee, reminding you that at ProFootballCentral.com, we have no off season. Have a good one. See you next time.